Today on the podcast, we have the real Slim Sherri, the voice Gen X had no idea it needed, and definitely the voice I needed in my life. So stay with us.
You're listening to the TikTok Famous Podcast, where viral fame meets raw reality. Join your host, Meredith Willits, as she dives deep with your favorite creators to uncover the real stories behind the scroll, the highs, the lows, the algorithm chaos, and everything in between. This is not your average interview. This is the TikTok Famous Podcast.
Thank you for being here with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm so excited. You have so much going on, which is just mind-blowing as I'm rolling through your linked tree with, live shows, a whole ass cruise, two businesses, two daughters.
Actually 4 businesses, but yes. I am busy and a tour and business and social media and a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm writing a book and just my life is crazy right now.
And so good though, because
it's good. It is good.
You, in my opinion, so I did a couple viral Gen X videos, like that was like a stint in my life, but you really have encapsulated, put in the I don't even know what to call it. Like you are literally, like I said, the voice of Gen X that we didn't even realize that we needed, but I think has made us so less alone by the things that you share. And growing up without the internet, without cell phones, without social media, I think every one of us felt like we were the only ones. And you showed me anyways. And I know you showed millions of other. You have 1.7 million followers on TikTok, 1.5 million followers on Instagram, which is those are insane numbers. If you guys don't know anything about social media, those are crazy numbers. You brought together millions of people that went, wait, I wasn't the only one.
That was what it was like for me, honestly. When I got started, I didn't set out, to be like a Gen X content creator. That was not, it was not my intention. I didn't really have an intention in the beginning. I just thought I was going to use social media to promote my business. I own a skincare company. I own a boutique. Like I thought, I like everybody else during the COVID times, like I was digesting content, and I got sick with COVID myself. And through that, I was, using TikTok as a way to, entertain myself while I laid around. And, I had that same idea. I think a lot of people did our age early on, which is that's for kids. Like TikTok's for dance trends and these, young kids. And so after, the time I spent on it while I was recovering from COVID, I realized there was a little bit more than just that on there. And I thought, I could do this. I could use this to promote my business. And so that was my original intention. And then it just never evolved into that. Like I literally, I made maybe one video for my business. And then I was trying to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
And so I was just messing around, I was an investigator for 26 years. So my brain just naturally goes down the rabbit hole. So I was just digging and into all the things about TikTok and how to make it work and how to use it and whatever. And I one day just made this video, that sounds only Gen X years. I don't even know why. I think maybe because my memory was really bad at that time. I had really bad COVID brain and also was I was in, perimenopause and entering into that final phase of that before menopause. So my brain was really just not working. And so I don't really remember exactly what led me to it, but I feel like maybe I had seen another creator talking about Gen X or something. And I had never identified as Gen X before that. Like I was just,
really,
I didn't know it was a thing. Like, you hear people talk about millennials and, all the bad rap that those guys get, and I raised my first child as a millennial. And so, I knew it was aware of that, but all this other generational labeling, it was not in my universe.
right.
And so when it came into my sphere and I was like, oh, that's me. I'm Gen X. I made this, that sounds only Gen X hears. It was just little tiny opening clips from songs that we would all know.
Yeah.
And initially that video didn't go that far. I was very new. And I was down the rabbit hole trying to figure out how to make the algorithm work. And if somebody had said, many people had said, just repost a video. If it doesn't do well the first time, repost it. This was before you could get in trouble for reposting. And so I reposted it like, I don't know, maybe a month later. And that I went to bed and woke up 40,000 new followers. And that I was shocked. That video suddenly took off and had a couple million, views on it. And I did what a lot of people did in the beginning. I think I went, early on you have to niche down with TikTok if you want to go anywhere. So I started making a lot of Gen X content. And initially it was just sort of the funny, a little bit nostalgic. But over time, that was my discovery, was what you mentioned, which was the Me Too, right? Like I didn't know that there were other people out there that had the same experiences that I did or similar experiences. And I didn't realize that. I just thought it was my experience, right? Like I thought this was mine. And so when I started making more Gen X content and people started following, and, the comments and the connection, the community that started to come from that was very therapeutic for me, and I think I ended up not intentionally setting out to be therapeutic for others, but I think that is what it turned into. I started talking about maybe some of the more difficult topics, some of the more taboo topics, some of the things we were all taught to, we were taught to be seen and not heard, and so I think a lot of us have been quiet our whole lives. And so what came out of that was this, Gen X voice. And I didn't set out to be a voice for our generation, but I think there's a lot. And I have already told a lot of stories. They were my stories, but now what I've learned through that is that for a lot of people, don't get me wrong, I get corrected often. That's not my story. You don't speak for me. I don't try to speak for everybody, but I recognize that I give voice to some people's story where they can't find the words, or they don't have the they don't have the reflection within themselves to be able to pull that story out of themselves. It's there. And so I kept doing it for that reason. I realized that I was not only helping myself in the process, but I was helping others. And it's been a wild 3.5-year ride so far, let me tell you. Now on a tour, a Gen X tour, like I again, 3.5 years ago, I did not identify myself as being a Gen X anything. It was not in my vocabulary.
I can't, 3 million, over 3 million followers in 3 years is wild. And like you said, a cruise.
It's almost 6 million actually collectively.
Is it really? Oh my God.
I have like almost 2 million on Facebook, and
okay.
And then I have a YouTube channel, and
oh my gosh.
Collectively, I think I'm just shy of 6 million right now. So, and I don't take that lightly at all. Like
no. People don't realize it's a huge responsibility, and it's you choose your words a little bit more carefully when you have that many eyes looking at you. But I think the one thing that is interesting as we're sitting here talking, without our past of having social media or phones, and you saying we didn't talk about it. So even though our friends at school may have also been having this experience back in the 80s, we didn't know because they didn't talk about it. So we thought only our parents hated us.
The motto of our parents and their parents was that you didn't air your dirty laundry. You did not talk about home outside of the home. That was definitely something that was instilled, I think, in many of us, is that you keep your skeletons in your closet. We don't, you keep secrets, and you kept family secrets. And I think a lot of us went through life that way, recognizing that, not only do you not talk about it because it's hard to talk about, but you don't talk about it because other people don't talk about their stuff. So they don't want to hear it, and I think that that's another thing that we kind of came up with is nobody wants to hear you whine or complain about anything, suck it up. And life, that's just life, right? Like the world is a hard place, and we grew up to be hard. And so I think that also guarded us a lot from sharing our stories or talking about. Now, a lot of us coming into midlife, I think millennials and the generations that follow are doing a much better job at processing trauma and trying to better themselves, if you will, mentally, mental health has become a much bigger topic. And it was not even, mental health was not in the dictionary when we were growing up. It did not exist. And I've been more and more as I'm writing my book, sort of like even fleshing out just sort of a little bit of that, that stereotype, the stigma, I think, not the stereotype, the stigma really that was attached to anybody that had any kind of what we would not have called mental health back then. They would have just called them crazy.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were put into homes and were drugged heavily with medications. I in the book, not really getting into that, but my brother he was a hyper kid. He was hyper. He's a boy. And they labeled him that. They labeled him hyper. And he struggled to focus in school, probably because he maybe had a little ADHD. We also didn't have that then. And so they, what do? He got in trouble a lot, and he was considered a hyper, problem kid. And they, wanted to put him on Ritalin and all these other things. And I think about all the kids that were affected by that. And we, again, the stigma that came along with like, oh, if you did feel like you were having any kind of struggles, you certainly didn't express them, because that would maybe get you, again, put into a home or on drugs, or, just the fears that were instilled in us by seeing what was happening to others, I think also kept us quiet for a long time. So watching these younger people peel back, their layers and the onion, if you will, getting after the root of their trauma, is giving us at this point, especially when you hit midlife, where everything just starts to go to hell anyway. You're like,
Why bother? Just let's
all
go.
The baggage gets a lot heavier, and you're like, you've run out of anything, any sort of care to give, if you will. I'm being, I'm picking my words wisely because I swear a lot, but you just sort of hit a point where you're like done with that, right? And so, suicide rates are the highest for women in our age demographic.
Yeah.
And the reason for
and
that,
alcoholism
and drugs, and, just all those things that I can see how prior generations, it led to that, or it leads to that. And so I think it's really important for us, especially those of us that have platforms, to use our voice, to make it okay to talk about menopause and trauma and just midlife and all that comes with that. And not just for us, but even for younger people, to say it, even we at our age don't have it all figured out. And it's okay to not be okay. Right. And so it's sort of bringing light to that. And the young people have inspired me to finally face, those demons that are in my past, and drag those skeletons out. And it's not easy. Our generation, although a lot of people don't even know we exist, but beyond that, that we're just a bunch of cynical, apathetic, rough around the edges group that, are this standoffish, unapproachable, like all these things that sort of go along with our generation. We are all of that, but there's so much more to us. There's so much more complexity. And the complexity comes when we start peeling. We're able to peel off the walls, the armor, if you will, that we've been wearing for so long, that's protected us, trying and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable now. I want to be able to give a voice to that, and even without coming right out and saying it, giving people permission, if you will. It's okay now. You're not that person anymore. You're here, and it's okay to talk about it. And I think some people feel like they need that permission, to be able to talk about where they've been and what they're going through, so that they can find happiness and peace and joy on the other side of that, and that's where I'm at. That's where I have evolved to, from early stages of just making funny music, type videos, getting into really more in-depth conversations about what we went through, what we endured, the good and the bad. Now, it's not all the bad. There's a lot of nostalgia, and I layer a lot of humor in there to make it easier for people, I think, to digest. But they're not always easy. They're not all easy conversations. And it hasn't been easy for me, because both my parents are still alive too. And my mother follows me, and so she sees my content. So we have some conversations about that. And so it's not easy.
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you if your parents were still alive, because I think that a lot of us, I don't know if the word is waiting to tell our truth, because we don't want to be that way or, expose those secrets or
Mhm.
I don't know. There's so many layers there that are just like crazy layers.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if your parents are still alive and how they do, if they feel attacked with some of the stuff that you're saying.
So my dad, he is just literally this last week texting me, figuring out who I am on social
Yeah.
media. And
Yeah.
so my cousin, his niece has told him, but he's not super aware. He's 78. He doesn't hear well. So if it doesn't have captions, he's not going to
Yeah.
be able to understand it. And so it's just really coming into his realm of like, wait a minute, how my daughter is like this persona. My mother, on the other hand, has followed me for quite some time. And so early on, we had, I think she did feel attacked and, defensive, if you
Yeah.
will. And although, I don't come right out, I've never once attacked either of my parents directly, and I have no desire to do that.
Yeah.
But, it's having those conversations of like me in coming to terms with my own some of the things I've been through. I can look back and reflect now through my adult lens of like recognizing that my parents, they were surviving too, right? They had their own trauma and their own things that they were trying to deal with at the time. And my father was an alcoholic and he was abusive, and there was, a lot of chaos in my world growing up. And I look at that now as through, like I said, my adult lens at where my mother was, and her just maybe being able to do the best that she could at the time. Were there mistakes made? Absolutely. But, doing the best that you can. And so trying to give, it took me a little while to get there, to give a little grace and understanding to that. But I also had to tell her, like, listen, your truth is not mine, right? Like the way you remember it at the time, the way that you experienced it through the lens that you were living in at the time is different than mine. I was a child, and so those are hard. Those weren't easy conversations.
Yeah.
They're conversations of like, this is my truth. And I'm not there. I softened it a little bit, I think, in the beginning of like, there's a lot of humor infused in there, right? There's a little exaggeration, if you will, just for the, to make it easier I spent a little time in the beginning trying to make her feel better,
Yeah.
and try to not make her feel attacked, because that was not my intention. But it was like, what, Mom, I've kept my mouth shut for 50 years. I don't want to be quiet anymore, and
That's what I was going to ask you too. Do you think that social media has given you a place to put things, so to speak, like a place to put your voice? And like like you said, we were told to be seen and not heard. And also the way I've expressed it or experienced it is even if you say it, nothing good can come from it. Like if you say the words, you're going to get hit, you're going to get spanked, you're going to get grounded, whatever. And then all of a sudden we have this place that we can put all these things, all these emotions, all these memories, all these feelings. Do you find that it has been therapeutic to have social media?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think I didn't intend to set out and be a content creator or have
Right.
I didn't think anybody was going to follow me. I really never thought I would be where I am. So yeah, in the beginning, it was a place for me to put it, to sort of speak about it, not talking about it, and really still being really challenged to be able to have those honest conversations with the people that are closest to me. Like I've got trauma in my past I've never told anybody,
Yeah.
and so only to myself, and so it was in the beginning, especially, extremely therapeutic to be able to start to chip away at some of the trauma, but package it in a way where it wasn't really directly my trauma, right?
Right.
Like I'm packaging it of like our generation,
Generation.
but slowly, chipping away at some of the things that really were haunting me or that I needed to get out. And so it's been very therapeutic to be able to get those out.
Yeah.
And then the benefit of that is that they have a place. They exist somewhere that I can reach back to them if I need to, if I'm reflecting, or if I'm at a different phase of that particular memory or trauma that I'm dealing with, I'm able to reflect and look back and go, oh, okay, that I'm able to now evolve or maybe further that conversation. So yeah, it's been very good for me. It's allowed me to, I guess, release some of the easier demons, the easier ghosts that are always around me. And so, yeah, no, I think the other thing I noticed, and I said it, was that it wasn't only therapeutic for me. What ended up coming of that was that there was this whole, millions of people that I never imagined were like, me too.
Me too.
Are you in my house? Like, are you in
Right.
were you there? Are you recording the jokes, right? Do you have a camera around me, or how are you reading my thoughts? How are you able to say all the things that I feel that I can't find the words for, and people, it really never hit me like how significant it was until I started bumping into people in public, right? Before the tour, just in general, I'd be out and maybe somebody would recognize me, and to have them come up in the beginning and the very first few times you hear somebody say like, you saved my life, or you changed my life.
Yep.
That was, I just remember going, this is not real. Like I have imposter syndrome, first of all, which I think is a big,
with 6 million followers. I get that.
Big part of our generation is imposter syndrome. We were never allowed to be good at anything, right? Like even if you got told, don't get too big for your own britches, don't
get too big for your britches.
Yeah, can't fit through that door, like you were always intentionally kept small, right? And so, there's always this idea that you're not good enough, or that, you aren't deserving of whether recognition or somebody giving you a compliment, you just feel unworthy of that. And so that's a lifelong struggle of like working through.
I don't know if you made that video, but that's a good one, right? Like, oh my gosh, I love your shoes. Oh, thanks. I got them at TJ Maxx for $3.99, or what I mean? Like,
I haven't.
And they're old, and because it has taken me forever to learn how to take a compliment. And I actually work with a lot of women to say, the only thing this week you're allowed to say is thank you. You're not allowed to explain it.
It's difficult. It's hard to hear. I think, for the first 50 years of my life, I never realized that was what it was like, that I did struggle to take a compliment. I did struggle to hear good things about myself and believe them. That's the key, is like learning to undo the belief that you don't deserve that type of recognition or compliment, or even just something as simple as saying, hey, your hair is really nice, or your shoes, you're like, you don't feel worthy.
Oh, thanks. I look horrible. Oh my God, I just woke up.
That's exactly what we do. Right. And so we look at it and go, somebody likes your shoes, like you said, and your the first thing is, oh, they're nothing. They were $3.99. Like I got them at the Goodwill or whatever. Like, why do we feel we are actually minimizing ourselves in those moments? And so that's a behavior we learned. And so, it's learning to sort of undo that. But so it was really hard for me in the beginning to hear that and be able to internalize that of like, well, I didn't save your life, like that. Nothing I said could possibly be that significant that it could have any kind of impact in your life. Like that is the way that I internalized that. And so now, being on tour, I have a lot more exposure to those. It's not like just randomly running into somebody, now there are people that come specifically to see me or Kelly or John or Nick or whatever. And those people who come up to me and like, they are like, I can see it now. I'm a little bit further. I still struggle with it, but I'm a little bit further beyond like that initial, like, almost like to being open to hearing what they want to say to me. Because, when they come up and you could just see the excitement and the tenderness even in their eyes, or their approach of like, you are meaningful in my life, right? You have meaning in my life. That has become easier, even though it's still hard to accept. It's become easier to embrace, because I have learned you don't get to nearly 6 million followers and not be doing something. So I have had to accept in my brain, like file that somewhere of like, you do help people, whether you believe that or not, like you do help people.
Yeah.
And so that's why after three, I mean, I would have never, if you'd have asked me 3.5 years ago, if I thought I'd still be making content, I would have laughed in your face. If you'd have asked me if I would have thought I'd be on a tour, I would have extra laughed in your face. Um, like I didn't think I would still be doing this 3.5 years later, but the reason I am is because there are people who need it. And I see that. I try not to overly get in the comments because they mess with my mental health a little bit.
Yeah.
But I did early on. I did, but I still go through. I'll cruise through them, and I still try to read and absorb when I can, when I'm mentally capable of absorbing that.
Yeah.
Because when you have imposter syndrome and when you have internal reflection issues, you tend to see 99 really great comments, and then there's that one. And that's the one that you will latch onto and you will let drag you down. And I did that early on. I did a lot of clapback videos, feeling like I needed to defend myself.
Yeah.
I don't do that as much anymore because I didn't want to bring that kind of negativity into my space. But it's that I show up for them. I show up for those people in the comments that are telling me that they look forward to it, that they need it, that they need that daily dose, whatever it is. And as long as they keep showing up, I'll keep showing up.
Well, what's so funny is I've said it a bunch of times just in life that we didn't have the language to identify any of it, like the words gaslighting or toxic or trauma.
Not in the dictionary.
Right. We didn't have the language. And I think what's so interesting about what you have done for Gen X is you have brought this language, and then you go, we were locked out of the house. And then we go, wait, other people were locked out of the house? My parents didn't just hate me. My mom just didn't want me out of the house at like 9 a.m. And I was like, she was sliding a peanut butter sandwich under the door, and then I could come in at the streetlights. Like, I literally thought my mom hated me. I did not have like when I made that one video and I was talking about wooden spoons, and then other people were like, oh, I had to pick my own switch. And there's like hundreds, if not thousands of comments of people saying I had to pick my own switch. And if it came back and it was too small, I got in even more trouble. Like I had to pick a lethal switch, which if people don't know what that is, it's basically a stick off the tree to get hit with. And I think that what you've done so beautifully is you've taken this one moment in a person's life and you've expressed it, you've explained it, you've given it life, you've given it language so that the listener, the viewer can go, I'm not the only one. My parents didn't hate me. It was just the way of life. It was just the way of boomers, if you will, or the silent, it matters who raised you. It was the way of a generation to be raised. And now also recognizing it as I'm sitting here talking to you, that although it also wasn't okay. And we can also do better with our kids. And so I think that it's this beautiful compartmentalization of all of these flashes of time. And P.S., now we have language for it. And P.S., Gen X has raised their children differently. And I think that when we give language to something, it changes everything.
Agreed. I think you're hitting on something that is really important to call out, which is that, not only there's these layers, right? So you're talking about the not being alone, not having the language, then suddenly having language and trying to figure out what to do with that, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I have a label for it now. I have somewhere to put it. Now, what do I do with that? And so that's the thing that, I see so often are the people that don't know, or they have it, right? They maybe even put it in a place, but they don't do anything with it. Instead, what they do is they don't know what to do with it. So you hear things like, that's who made me who I am. I wouldn't trade it for anything. That, we are better for it. You're not better for trauma. Like if you think they don't recognize that, like trauma traumatizes you. Okay. Yeah. It erases parts of your memory. It
causes brain damage.
It causes, and add lead poisoning on top of that, brain damage. Okay. For our generation, there's just so many things, but it's that they have been conditioned to believe that whatever they were given, whether that be punishment, trauma, lack of love, lack of affection, the idea that the world is just tough and you have to be tougher, like all these things, that being locked out of the house, was a good thing. Sure, we all loved our freedom. I would trade anything to have that kind of freedom back for my children. But there are guide rails, right? There is the level of like what is okay and what is neglect.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. Some of them aren't ready to unpack that. Some of them never will unpack that. Some of them are ready, but they don't know how to move forward, And so it's chipping away a little by little. And I will continue to just little by little, and not just me, but even creators like yourself, which I love when you started talking about it. Wherever you found that voice, stripping away, like pulling back the curtain, right? And I kind of attributed to, like, this is in my book, of like, over time, we sort of have this, this is really about conditioning and like the lessons we were given and that we kind of carried into our adult life. The belief system, the foundation we were given. We didn't ask for it. That's what we were given. And so it's like this, it's stitch by stitch, these stitches of threading, and this armor, like I said, that we sort of end up with when we're grown and we leave home, and this is how we face the world. A lot of that is rooted, like the early stitches are rooted in that foundational, the foundational experiences, those fundamental lessons, the belief system that you're built based on, whether not just your family, but society, religion, all sorts of things that are layered in there. And now I'm at a point in my life where I've started to pull away at the fray. Like I'm pulling. It's like that string you got, in your pants, where you're like, and then when you pull it, the seam comes apart. That's where I'm at. It's pulling away, and stripping it away, but not being done at the end. It's not like I'm going to completely unravel it all and throw it in the trash. It's what stitching is worth keeping, right? Like some of it's still good. There's still a lot of good from that time that I wish we had now.
Yeah.
That seems to have been erased a little bit. But then there's some things that I'm okay letting go, and then there's some things I just want to like take like a lighter and set those threads on fire, right? Yeah. And so it's that. It's some of them aren't ready to pull the string. They're not ready. Their phrase there's so many phrases they don't know where to start.
Well, the one thing that as you're speaking, what I'm hearing is, and I'm sure you went through it and I did with your content, is when you recognize that it was toxic or it was trauma or it was abuse, okay? Because we didn't, like, spanking was normal. Like, that's just what happened. That was parenting. That was good parenting. But when you go, wait, no, that wasn't okay, and maybe that was abuse, and maybe it did mess me up. Like, I think that a lot of people, and I see this especially on Facebook, is I turned out okay. And when you recognize that it was abuse, wait a minute, my parents might not have been as great as I'm trying to make them, to make it make sense in my brain. And so if you confront that, now all of a sudden there's that cognitive dissonance of what is, or what I believe, or what I want it to look like, and how could I move forward, that my parents abused me, but I love them, but it wasn't okay. I think there's a lot to contend with when you start to actually.
There's so many layers to that, and you're right. Some of them believe that all of that was for their own good.
Yes.
That it made them who they are. And they're right. It did. But some of those layers aren't necessarily what our perception has been our entire life that they were. And then when somebody starts to bring light to that, or you read something or you hear something, and like you said, you start to go, hang on a minute. That was my experience, and I never saw it from that perspective. I didn't. And then maybe you can, some of them can internalize and connect that with like challenges that they have in life, obstacles that they struggle to overcome,
people pleasing.
Yeah. Imposter syndrome, like whatever it is,
right.
All these things where you're like, I never thought about that. I was wired that way. Like,
right. Like, this isn't who I am.
It's the wiring. It's the hard wiring. Yeah. And I talk about, in some of my videos of like, it's like reaching in and ripping those wires out, like just rip them out. because they don't belong there. But you know, some people believe that, well, I'm wired that way. They hardwired, and you can't undo it. You can't pull out the wires without killing everything, you know?
Yep.
And so
This is who I am. This is who I am. And it's like, no,
me, you know, and some people they're the real problem, one of the biggest problems I think for our generation, and I haven't talked about this. So you're getting like a first probably taste of this, is the masking. We are like expert maskers. I've talked about it a little bit, like we're like chameleons. You know, we can blend in with the best of them, or we can stand out when we want to. But it's the masking. We are experts at that, and we had to learn very young. Not all of us. I always give that disclaimer. A lot of us learned very young to mask. And that was masking to please your parents, please the adults around you, or whomever. It was masking to hide your feelings, because we weren't really allowed to have those. Feelings were a weakness, and you
in unison.
yeah, and we were told not to cry. You know,
Yeah.
we were told to
Stop
crying, or they'd give us something to cry about.
Yep.
Or we were taught to self-isolate very young. Go to your room if you're going to cry, or you were sent to your room and put in isolation intentionally for whatever period of time, you know, and we learned to mask, because we learned that having feelings came with punishment for the most part. Right. And so it's the masking, and we're so good at it that we're, even when we feel something internally of like feels off, or we know is something that haunts us, we would never show. We show up with this mask of like, you can't hurt me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have feelings, right? That is the hallmark of our generation, of like, we don't give a fuck.
Yep.
Sorry. That's our standard response. We don't have feelings. We were conditioned to believe that. We were taught to shove our feelings and suppress them deep down inside. And so now a lot of us are struggling at this phase of life to rectify or reconcile all those emotions that we've shoved down for so long. How that's showing up now for our generation is in our health, because the body keeps the score. Okay.
Yep.
You can hide it all you want to out here, but inside your body is telling you you are not well.
Fibromyalgia,
heart disease, high
breast
blood
cancer,
pressure, obesity. Like, there's so many things that they're now, you know, starting to make. We've got enough, you know, data to show us that mental health and its direct connection with illness in the body, they have enough of that now to be able to start to say, yes, you have to work through these things, or you're probably going to die younger, you know, or you're going to be really sick. And, you know, they're already starting to put studies out about the cancer rates and heart disease rates in our generation are higher than any there's ever been. Now, some of that might be just through, you know, processed foods and all kinds of crap, but there's something I think deeper there to be said about our mental health and how your mental health affects your physical health. And so, you know, a lot of us are arriving at this point with a lot of not just mental baggage, but then health baggage to go with it. I'm fortunate. I'm in really good shape for now. You know, I mean, I don't know, but I'm working on unpacking, because I can't carry that baggage around anymore. That baggage gets heavy. It's heavy. The mask is heavy, and I just don't want to wear it anymore. You know, I'm tired. I'm tired of that facade. I'm tired of having to act like I'm one thing when inside I'm something else. You know, that just grows old for a lot of people. And which is why I also joke around, you know, I don't make just Gen X content anymore. I talk about aging, you know, I talk about aging, and I talk about, you know, menopause, and I talk about all this stuff that's going wrong, you know, and I do that because that's part of the trauma too, not the menopause part, but like a lot of the, you know, my body just, it turns on me for, you know, no reason. And some of that is because we lived really hard lives. But some of that is just the mental load that we're carrying, you know? And so I talk about that too, to try to make jokes about, you know, maybe people will look at their health differently and be like, yeah, I do hurt. Maybe I should move more, you know, because depression is also something I think that plagues our generation pretty heavily. We mask it well, we're functioning depressed people.
Yeah.
We are highly functioning depressed people. And, it may be helping them to get, because depression just gets you stuck, right? A lot of people never get out of bed. They don't leave their homes.
Yeah.
And I just hope, even if just one person gets, hears something and that gets them moving or gets them to want to change something in their life for the better, then it makes it worth it for me.
Well, and I just keep seeing an X in my head, right? Because of Gen X, but also I feel like we were the we're the in between of the silent and the boomer and the new. I think a lot of people that say I was raised right probably started, if not continued, to raise the Gen X's children in that same style of hitting and don't speak unless spoken to, and so like there's a little guilt. I know I raised my first child who's going to be 29, much different than I'm raising my 14-year-old, 13-year-old. And so, I started parenting the way my parents parented. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I can't sleep at night being like this. This isn't working. And so I changed it. But I think that we are the intersection between the old regime and the new way of parenting, the new way of mental health, the new way of communication. And I know a lot of times when I tell any of my kids, like, oh, yeah, I was locked out of the house all day, or yeah, I got hit, or whatever, they're just mesmerized by it. They're like, how did you live? Like, I don't even get what you're saying, or if I see one of my kids' friends who are getting physically abused, it's like mind blowing. Like, who's still hitting their kid in 2025? Like, who is physically touching their children? And the fact that they want to bring back SWATs in school, I was like, you're going to bring back SWATs?
Wait, they're
like,
really talking about bringing that back?
They're talking about bringing back corporal punishment into the schools. I about fell
What?
over. Yeah, I remember kids, I could say their names right this second, having to go down to the vice principal's office in middle school and hold their ankles and get SWATs. It was like, and now they want to bring that back. Like, what?
Wow. I remember in middle school, our assistant principal didn't even call you to the office. He would walk the halls with he had a giant paddle.
Yep, the paddles.
He would walk the halls and line kids up on the locker, line them up in a line and whack them. Like, all day long he did this. I swear this guy got pleasure out of hitting kids because he was
100%.
always whacking somebody. If you got called to the office though to get whacked, it was worse. You were getting not just a whack, you were getting several whacks. And anyway, I can't believe that they're.
Yeah, I saw it the other day on social
media.
media.
Are they taking that to a vote? Like, I'm confused. Is that getting voted on by the people? Who's making this decision?
I know. Well, I think there's lots of crazy decisions. The one thing that also I think is, so you and I had a kind of a DM conversation about how all of a sudden, and this is why my video ended up on television, was the generational wars, where some Gen X people were like, millennials suck and Gen Z sucks, and I was making videos going, wait a minute, I have kids that are this and they're amazing, and they're not wussies. No. They're actually taking a minute before they take a job, and they're thinking about their mental health, and they're thinking about time off, and they're not working 32 hours a day trying to make, you know what I mean? Like, they're actually not gaslighting themselves. And I think Gen X, we gaslight ourselves. That's why we don't know what we're thinking. That's why we can mask, because we're like, we're fine. Everything's fine. Gaslight.
Yeah.
And that's the worst gaslighting you can do, PS, is yourself. And we do it constantly, of how we feel and think and our opinions. But the idea that one generation is better than or less than, I think we need to look at, it's an evolution. We're getting someplace different. The fact that, my 16-year-old or 13-year-old will tell me, like, hey, mom, you're kind of crashing out over there. Like, why are you being so angry? I just walked in the house. And then for me to be able to go, wait a second, okay, and not say, shut the hell up, like our parents probably would have, like, mind your own business, get to your room. I'm like, okay, wait, reset. She just said something that made sense. Hold on, let me dial in. And you and I had some conversations like, wait, this isn't a generational war. Like, that's not what this is about. this is about all of us working together to figure out how to make all of it better. And like, this is what I bring to the table, good, bad, or ugly. This is where I'm at. This is how I was raised. This is what I bring. And so what do you have for me? And like, these are our kids you're talking about that are spoiled and entitled and don't want to work.
It drives me. I don't really get into it because there's so many people that make these comments, the negative comments, I can't even answer them all about, the entitlement and the, laziness and whatever, all the things that they, entitled participation trophy. That one drives. How many times are you going to talk about this? How many times are you talk about the Tide Pods, that Tide Pod eaters or whatever? And I'm like, we did dumb shit too, what I don't want. And I know depending on who's watching it, some are going to perceive it this way, but we don't want to be the next boomers, right? I share stories in hopes to better my own generation for the next. Right. I intentionally do not bag on other generations. I don't, even when I'm touching on boomers and maybe the way they raised us or whatever, I don't intentionally go, boomers are this, they suck. Or I don't do that because there's no benefit to that. There's no benefit in tearing each other down. They can't change the way they were raised. We can't change the way we were raised. They also, most of them, boomers are now in their 60s, 70s, some
80s.
Of them in their early 80s.
Yeah.
They're not probably going to change at this point, right? So it does no good to try to tear them down. They are who they are. You got to meet them where they're capable. It's the generations that come after mine, where it's like, I would love, because I know there are a lot of Gen Xers still raising young kids. I know, because I have an 11 and a 14-year-old and a 35-year-old. Those are my kids' ages. Yeah. So it's like, I want to create a better space for them because I won't be here forever. Right. And I never hit any of my kids. It was one thing. I never was going to have kids. I was convinced. I was like, I'm never having kids because I would never bring a kid into this shitty world. Like that's where I was. But then I got pregnant at 16 and had my first child at 17. And he changed, he saved my life. He changed my life. Anyway, raising him, there was one thing I said was, if I'm going to have a kid, I poured every ounce of myself into him because, I was going to do everything I could to make sure he had a better life than I did. And I think a lot of us did that, and I think that's where millennials somewhat, some of them, because some of them were raised by boomers, but some of them get a bad rap because, they're perceived as being these entitled, lazy, participation trophy kids or whatever. It was us. It's Gen X that we did that. We started to parent them in a way that we had wished that we had been parented and want to make sure that they knew their feelings mattered and that they weren't being, excluded from things. And because they either weren't talented, they're too young to know if they have any talent, really. I mean, and some of them do, some of it shows up early, but a lot of them don't discover that stuff till later in life. Yeah. Anyway, it was also me making sure that nobody ever hit my kids. Like, I was like, I'm not going to hit them and nobody else is ever going to hit my kids. And, so I never hit my children. I have 11, 14-year-old girls and my son is my oldest. And I do joke around with him now when he says something stupid. I'm like, I didn't hit you enough. That's what's wrong with you. And I joke about it, but I don't mean that. I know that hitting a child is not the answer. But a lot of us, unfortunately, a lot of us were raised that way. We were hit a lot, and hitting was the form of that was the conditioning to get you to fall into whatever line of compliance and obedience that they expected you to be in. And also in hopes that they thought that would, teach you how to be a better human growing up, I guess. But what it taught a lot of us was violence. Right. And or
to give up.
A lot of us, that's our go-to. Like when something doesn't go the way you want, or somebody doesn't behave the way you want, is anger and violence, right? And so some of our generation hasn't figured out how to stop reacting in that anger and thinking that they look at themselves and go, it worked for me. Like they hit me and I turned out just fine. So it works. And so they perpetuate that generational, curse is what I call it. And so My hopes is that one day, the idea that we're going to bring back corporal punishment in school is mind-boggling to me.
You'll have to send you the video when I see it.
Not hitting children, hitting kids. And, this is the part that always really messed me up. So I spent 26 years, I told you, as an investigator. I put a lot of people in jail in my career. I worked organized crime cases, fencing operations, stuff like that. And I know a lot about the law, about the law and just the judicial system and like how things work. And the part that always bothered me is I was like, if I'm 18 and I punch you in the face, okay, you can charge me with assault.
Yep.
And I will most likely be found guilty because I punched you in the face.
Right.
But we can hit kids and they have no recourse whatsoever to bring charges against somebody for hitting them. And I always just didn't appreciate the double standard there. It's like, there's something, why do we see children as like being less
property?
Worthy? Yeah, they're property. Why do we see them as less worthy of the same type of protection that we would offer an adult if somebody were to hurt them?
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, the idea of bringing back corporal punishment. That is not the answer. That's that whole idea that corporal punishment or any kind of pain that's inflicted to control and demand obedience and compliance, that dates back to, that's centuries and centuries ago. It's the fact that we're still doing it. We've evolved so much as a species, as humans, that I can't believe we would even consider bringing that back. The switch thing, for example, that's like caning somebody, basically. Yep. It's almost it's a mini version of being caned with a switch. And if you know anything about caning, it's like one of the most hurtful and painful ways of being beat is with these big giant canes or whatever. It's like a mini version of that with a little bit of extra sting because it, whips through the air really, really fast. There's thin piece of wood. But it blows my mind that that's even a consideration. I would never authorize the school to hit my child. I'm hoping that it comes to that of we'd have to sign a permission slip for you to hit our kids or something, because I think that, then if it wouldn't be a vote, I would have a real problem with that if somebody put their hands on my kid. I'm going to go to jail. I'm going to go to jail because I do remember that violence part I was talking about.
Right.
I have to really contain that demon. I have to really hold that one back. And that one's wired to go to prison if the wrong thing happens. So, I'm not meant to go to prison. I know I won't survive there because some of you are going to shake me in the shower because either that or I'm going to have to run the place because there's no in between for me. And so I already know I shouldn't go to prison. But if I do, it's been good knowing you guys.
It's been nice knowing you. Well, I will tell you, the insanity of, like you said, it's okay to hit kids. But I remember being afraid of going to the DH, which was the detention home. That was the big thing. I grew up in
they had homes for kids, people. If anybody watching didn't know, they used to put kids in homes.
Right. It was like kid jail. So if you did say anything about your parents hitting you, you could go to the DH. I was from the smallest town in Ohio. It was you're going to go to the DH. It's
wait,
so you
I'm from Ohio. Where are you from?
Avon Lake.
Yeah, I was born in Findlay.
Get out. That's hysterical. Yeah. See, great Ohio minds.
Well, the Midwest comes with its own set of baggage. Let me tell you, there's the South, right? You hear people talk about the South, but the Midwest, so deeply rooted in, just heavy Midwestern values, a lot of religion,
a lot of immigrants, Polish, Irish.
Oh yeah, a lot of that. German. Then you've got, the whole Amish and Mennonite thing going on there. A lot of Midwest is a wild, wild part of the country. And we could have a whole podcast just about the Midwest. Casseroles and weekend holy revivals. It's crazy to me because I've been in the South now for going on 13 years, and I can see the Southern pieces of the South that show up, but I'm this has got nothing on the Midwest. It really doesn't. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot more trauma that came out of the Midwest from probably prior to the year 2000. I can just go back 2000 and before. I've been gone now for 13 years, but it started to get a little bit better in the, early 2000s, I guess. But yeah, I think there's probably, we could talk all day just about how they messed a whole bunch of people out of the Midwest.
Yeah. I got out and moved to Philly around, I think it was age 34. I met my second husband. And so we moved to Philly and then Florida, here I'm in Chicago now, which is very, very different than Ohio. Like Chicago and Ohio might be two totally different things. Just because of it's such a big city and it's just, it's just so profoundly, but the Cleveland area, my son and sister live in Cincinnati, Columbus. That whole Ohio is a whole place to be reckoned with, where, I always say I learned finally at 50 to be kind and not necessarily nice, because nice gets you killed. Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Like nice is just nice, like always nice, like not honest, but nice.
Yeah.
And that right, when I say the word nice, I can feel my heart kind of tense up of like the fakery that must go with the masking, as you said.
The masking, I'm telling you, it's the fake, and I even think about, the term we were told, fake it till you make it. Like we were told to fake it. If you can't figure it out, fake it. And until you make it. And so a lot of us, we're still that, again, that feeling that you're having, that's the body part I'm talking about.
Yep.
Like it's setting off bells and whistles and alarms in your body for a reason. Like I've more recently really had that come into my awareness of like being more present and in my healing journey of like focusing on being present and being aware of like the sensations in my body and how it makes me feel. And it's when all of a sudden my chest gets heavy for no reason, or my fight or flight goes off, right? My arms start to sweat. My armpits are sweating. My heart is racing. Like, it's like, why do I feel this way? I didn't just fly by a cop doing 85. That's that feeling. Like, cause a lot of people don't recognize. It's like, exactly. If you speed and you fly by a cop when you're speeding, that instantaneous flush that you get when you recognize the cop just saw you fly by, that's your fight or flight kicking in. Okay. And so if that's showing up in places in your everyday life for reasons you can't figure out, there's something there. There's a reason your alarm system, your internal alarm system is going off. And it's becoming aware of that, of like trying to get to the root of that. Like, what is that? Why is that showing up? Because your mind might be telling you one thing, but your body's sending a different signal. And so it's me working on becoming more aware of that and trying to figure out what that is. And so that I am in more control of mind and body.
Yeah.
Right?
Aware.
And so a lot of people, it's that like you saying that it makes you're like just saying it. Like that shouldn't be there, but it is, and it's there for a reason, right? That's what's protect those signals. That's that wiring, that instinctual stuff, the chemical, stuff that releases in the body. That's there for a reason. It's protected us. It has got us this far. And I do joke around our generation is the smallest because a lot of us didn't survive. They just didn't make it. But whether through the trauma and all that, or whether it through, natural selection, I don't know. Some of the ones that made it, we were here. Whether people want to, whether it be the younger people, the older people, because boomers like to come in and continuously, they're still trying to tear us down. If you go in the comments and you see them, they're still trying to check us. They're still trying to keep us small. They want to keep us in our place.
Yeah. I just had a good comment the other day. Someone was like, your generation is so apathetic. You don't do shit. And I was just like, okay, well, we were taught to shut the fuck up. Like, what?
And so we're trying to learn.
We're trying to undo that.
Right?
Yeah.
We're trying to undo it. We're trying not to be quiet, but it's the, boomers who'll come in and say, you guys are nothing. You're only whatever we made you. You guys are, you're not special. We did all that too. Like, they like to still try to check us and keep us in our place. Right.
Yeah.
And then you have the opposite end of that, of young people who are doing what you're talking about. Gen X, you guys aren't shit. You're apathetic. You're so Karen. You're so cringe, whatever. They are the opposite side of that, still also trying to keep us small or put us back in our place. They don't want us to be loud. They don't want us to come out. And because a lot of us whether we like it or not, that generation, if we parented them, they got their own trauma. They got their own baggage, right? And so we're not only forgotten, but we're also stuck in this weird place, like you were talking about earlier, of being sort of straddling this analog world, this digital world, a world where we didn't talk about mental health. We didn't talk about our trauma, and we didn't even have trauma. We didn't even label it trauma. It was not, there was none of that.
There was no word.
There was nobody asking you if you needed a therapist. We didn't go to therapy.
Our parents, I remember being taken to therapy, and I think it was to be fixed, like fix her.
They did. They would send you to get fixed if you had
Bring her back better,
considered to be wrong,
right.
Whatever that is,
problematic.
There was a place they could send you, to get you fixed, but that generally came with its own set of trauma. But regardless, that's the homes I was talking about, right? Like they had ways of sending you off, but therapy, like about trying to work through your issues and better yourself, that didn't exist. Therapy was not in my vocabulary. It was never even offered. And I had a lot of trauma. It was not something anybody ever said, do you need to talk to somebody? That was not a thing. Yeah. We had school counselors, but the counselors were really there to help you with your schedule and make sure you stayed out of trouble. Like if you only went to see the counselor if you were in trouble. Yep. And so anyway, we straddle this world where we didn't talk about anything. And now we're straddling a world where everybody wants to talk about everything. And we also, because we were forgotten and we've always been the quiet ones or told to be quiet, I don't think any of them, no matter which side you're on, they don't want to hear it. I don't know that they have the capacity themselves to manage all that we are having to unpack. And that's why now I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what? You're in my comments. This is my video.
This is my world.
This is my world. I'm a whole universe. Okay. So if you don't like it, you can just scroll on by. You can block me. Yep. Actually, let me do you the favor. I'll block you. Then we never have to see each other again. Like I've come to that point where it's like, I'm no longer going to temper myself to try to please the others, because this is my space. This is my channel. And if you don't like that, even if you follow me, because I've had some say, I've followed you since the beginning and I liked you until X, whatever it is I said that pissed off. And I'm like, well, that's funny how those kind of relationships work. You like me until I say something that either you don't like or makes you uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden you don't like me anymore.
Right.
And so I've learned to just be like, whatever. I tell them now, for every 10 of you that unfollow me, there's 1,000 signing up. So I don't say that to be cocky, but it's just a reality. So I won't miss you. Don't let the door hit you or the good door split you. Yep. So that's kind of, I wasn't like that early on, but now that's just kind of where I am, because I've had to sort of toughen my own exterior to, guard myself against. That's why I said, try not to get in the comments too much anymore, because those people, that one comment will just bring me down,? And so I always just keep doing, tell everybody, do your own thing. Don't ignore them, because there's always somebody that hates the fact that you are speaking truth. I think that's the other
you're
thing.
Not hurt. I think that's one thing, like I've grown.
You're healing.
I've got a video going viral right now, and it is just blistering. There's one on Instagram right now that's going nuts, and there's one on TikTok that's going crazy. And it's just the growth that you have, in my opinion, or I've had anyways, of just like, it's okay if you don't like me. Like, I'm okay now. Like, I used to be like, oh my gosh, I have to defend myself. I have to explain myself. And, in the comments and replying, and that, like you said, the clapbacks on this. And now I'm just like, yeah, it's okay. I'm going to be okay.
You know what? Because what you start to recognize is how you're allowing them to affect you. Right. Yeah. And in trying it, you have to recognize that they're a lot. And I did, I had to start recognizing, like, they're not healed. Yeah. And healing is not, let me, because I definitely don't want to frame this, because a lot of people, I think, oh, she's healed herself. Right. Healing is not a destination. Okay.
It's not a destination.
It is a journey.
Yeah.
Okay. And that journey never ends. Okay. Because as you unpack one thing, it uncovers something else. And then, as you're going through life, there's going to be other things. You're just always sort of in this phase of healing, right? It's an evolution. And, you know, so I don't want to ever paint the picture that I'm like, I don't think people are ever going to be just healed. Anybody who says, oh, I'm healed.
They're dead. They're on their way to the funeral home is where
They're
they're
in
at.
denial. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a destination, but in the journey of healing is that I've recognized that some of them haven't begun to heal. They don't know where to begin. Some of them are in some phase of that journey, maybe earlier than where I'm at, and recognizing that there's probably a time where I would have been like that, right?
Yeah.
If I was still stuck. And that's how I felt most of my life, just sort of stuck in that place. And so, you know, I get a lot of people that'll ask me, how did you do it? How did you heal? How did you get here? Because they see you and they want to be like, they see themselves going, I want to be you when I grow up. And that one always makes me just feel, ugh. You don't want to be
right?
when you grow up. Okay. You don't want to be me. This comes with a whole lot of just a bag of shit but
Took a lot to get here.
yeah. So it took me a lot to get here. Yeah. A lot of work, but you know, people think there's some sort of secret, you know, or maybe they make assumptions based on my content that they think, oh, you know, she maybe had a little trauma, but she must have had a good life, right? Or she was lucky, or somebody gave her something that got her to where she is. And that's none of that's true. But it's recognizing that I don't owe them an explanation, right? Like and again,
that's healing, though. Isn't that healing?
And it feels good to finally sit in a place where it's like, I don't owe you anything.
Okay.
I don't owe you an explanation. I don't owe you I don't have a reason. I don't need to defend myself.
Yep.
And I did feel like that early on. Like those comments bothered me. They hit me in the gut, right? Like it was like somebody that was in some way questioning my character or my story, whether it was
intention.
Yeah, the intention, whatever. That really bothered me. And now I'm like, I don't care about it. I care, but I care about the bigger picture. I care about the greater number of people who follow me for the good, right? Not this person that's miserable in their life or that hates to see anybody else do well or speak truth, or they just, maybe it's that they're so damaged that they can't hear the truth. I've learned to accept that is okay.
The truth's too scary. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Because then you have to undo your entire ego. I think that's a lot of it. We've attached ourselves to belief systems. And I know that if you went to school and I went to school, when we went to school, we're unearthing and undoing religion, what we were taught. Like we're going through not only learning new things, but unearthing and undoing everything we've learned as very, very different than what the reality is that existed on our planet, existed in our country. And so we're undoing basically our entire ego, which I think is back to the no more F's to give, because it's like, wait a minute, I spent 12, 14, 16 years in school and it was all a lie. Wonderful. The only thing that was a truth, it was pottery class. Great. like everything else was bullshit. Wonderful. You know, and I think that's where we're at, is just kind of like, wait a minute, like everything kind of goes, and just being open. And I think that is the beautiful part of your channel, is kind of having fun. You know, like one of my favorite videos is like, how can you summon an entire generation? And it's either like Prince, you know, the beginning of,
you can't summon a whole generation just by playing a song. And it's like, whatever, dude, you can't, that's not true. I love those kinds of videos. Those are just light and fun and nostalgic. And I think a lot of us, like I said, arriving at this point in life, are also very nostalgic for a time that doesn't exist anymore, right? Like those times are gone. And so a lot of nostalgia. And I think a lot of nostalgia is also rooted in the healing. Like you feel nostalgic often because there's a lot of reflection there on the person that you used to be, right? Maybe the person that you are no longer, right? Like, this is who I was, and now this is who I am, and maybe who could I have been? Or whatever happened in your life, that whatever choices you made, whatever that led you to here. I think we sometimes reflect and think, God, I wish I could just go back to that carefree,
viewfinder.
Yeah.
Riding my bike.
You start to feel nostalgic, and nostalgia can be good and bad. It can be It can be bad if you're looking back with a lot of regret. And that's where for me, I'm like, my heart hurts for the people that are living in that space as a regret of like, it's never too late. And I talk about that. Like, you're never too old. You're never too late to reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
I didn't plan to be 50 years old and be a viral content creator. Like that was not on my bingo card. Okay. It was just not. And so, and now on tour and writing a book and all that, none of those were in my viewfinder, or my windshield, until I was 50. And I had a good career and all that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I worked my ass off. It wasn't that I didn't, but I was miserable. I wasn't happy during that. I didn't really start figuring out how to heal until I was 50. Yep. And so it was like a door strangely, I turned 50 and like a weird door opened that wasn't there, or it was, and I didn't have the key. I don't know which one it was, right. But it's sharing that message of like, you're never too old. You're never too late. It's never too late. So many people I see in the comments that I know are my age or older than me that are like, it's too late for me. It's not. It's never too late. And I hope to inspire people in that way of like, think if you're feeling nostalgic, look back and think about what was it about your life then that you're missing? Because often what you'll find in there are doorways to the person that you wanted to be, or to passions that maybe you had at the time that you let go because you got married and had kids and you had a career and whatever, or somebody told you shouldn't be that because you needed to be this, right? Like you have to go to college, you have to do X because otherwise you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to get anywhere. That was the thing we were spoon fed, right? Yep. Like you're not going to be shit if you don't go to college. Well, I didn't go to college. I had a kid at 17. I lived my entire life believing I was never meant to be anything greater because I didn't go to college. My own father, to this day, not so much now because I've checked his ass, but until just the last couple of years would say things like he couldn't understand how I was so successful. Because I have a younger brother that is his child, and then I have an older brother that's not his. But anyway, my younger brother, he's pretty successful. He was in the military. He's gone to college. He has a degree, all that. My dad would literally look at me, look at my house, look at my life, come to visit or whatever, and be like, I don't understand how you did all this without a college degree. Like it's like those that didn't really. Finally, one day I was like, you got to stop saying that to me because you are reinforcing the belief that I have in my head that I'm not good enough. Yeah. Because I didn't go to college, that I can't possibly deserve any of this because I didn't get a degree. Like that stuff was still, and my father was still saying it. And finally, why is my brother good enough? Why do you praise him? He would praise him all the time. Oh, hey, look at him. He's went to, the military, and he's got this great job because of his degree. Like, stop. Like you're okay praising him, and you can't just look at what I've done and what I've worked given my blood, sweat, and tears to, and go, oh, I'm proud of you. That was not something he was able to say, until I finally put him in his place, and he says it a little more often now. That's why I said it's so funny that just in this last week he's texted me and he literally texted me and said, "Wait a minute, are you the real Slim Sherri?"
That's fantastic.
This was his words of like, holy shit moment. He said, like, I had been told that you were doing something, but I had no idea. Like, this is who you are. And basically it was like, then it was, don't forget me. That was what he said. Don't forget me when you're, whatever. And I'm like,
when you're famous with 6 million followers, don't forget me. It's like, Dad,
don't forget me. I'm like, first of all, I don't see myself that way. I'm extremely humble, extremely grounded. But it was funny that I was like, I've been doing this for 3.5 years, and you just now have decided to go research whatever my cousins.
But isn't that the entire Gen X in a nutshell right there? You know what I mean? Like, and I think it's our generation that is bound and determined to change everything, to look at life and go, you can be extremely successful working on HVAC or being a plumber or an electrician or a beautician. Like,
well, I'm glad we're bringing trade back.
We're bringing trades back. Yeah.
Because for so long we got away from it. Right.
And all the thought processes.
Degrees. Yeah. And now we're like, that degree doesn't mean anything if you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Or unless you have 20 more years after that, be specializing to be a doctor or a lawyer or
Well, and then
psychiatrist.
what happens 20 years in, they start phasing you out because your age, like that ageism is a real thing in the
Yep.
workplace.
Yep.
They phase you out, or they can get somebody younger, more enthusiastic, for less money or whatever.
For less
Like there's
money.
so many, yeah. And then what happened was we spent so many years doing that we ended up being short in the trade world. And now it's good to see trade coming back. Trade can be really well-paying jobs. Those are things that people need. Like we actually need people who can work on plumbing and electrical and
Build
flooring,
houses.
build houses, because we have a housing shortage. Like there's so many things that, it's like, oh, we should have never got away from wood shop in school. We shouldn't have got away from mechanics. Like there's all the things that I remember we had in school that I don't even think they have anymore.
Well, my son, I know he takes cooking, and my daughter did sewing, so they're still doing at
I
least at
remember
our
home
school.
ec, like that was
Home
a
ec,
thing.
yeah.
But like I don't know if these kids can still opt for wood shop or mechanics, or I don't know if they have that. I remember we had
I don't know.
electrical, you could go, there were things you could go and do that were teaching you hands-on experience, for the real world, because we don't teach these kids what they're really going to experience when they get out into the real world. And it's like I went to a high school that did teach some of that. It gave you like
We
skills.
had like where you could work on cars, and then you could go to joint
That's the
vocational
mechanics,
school.
the shop class.
Yep.
They called it shop class.
Yep.
And you would go and they wrenched on cars, and they learned about cars. And there was wood shop where you learned how to use saws and build stuff. And I don't know that they do that anymore. And
I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. But I feel like because of that, these kids today, I'm like, my son who's 35 barely knows. He would know how to check his oil. He would not know. You know why? Because all these kids have transferred that to a paid service. Like somebody else. I don't wait. You want me to check you want me to balance my checkbook? What? I don't even have a checkbook. Well, I didn't know I was supposed to balance it. Like they don't know. They have no concept, right? And so that's like those life skills that they need. They don't teach that kind of stuff anymore. And I'm like, I really worry for the future. I do. I really worry.
I think it's just gonna shift so much that they're gonna be needed in different ways, and
AI is going to save everything.
AI is gonna save everything.
Apparently, yeah. Did you hear about Starbucks that tried to bring robots in to take over, and now they're having to hire because they're like, oh, that didn't work.
That didn't work so much with scalding hot coffee.
I think they thought AI, you could just walk up and be like, order your caramel macchiato or whatever with 3 pumps of whatever, and it would just make the thing, and it would be faster and probably more efficient and cheaper, right? Like cut out labor. They figured out that didn't work.
Not so much. Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I have to say this has been like so amazing to speak with you. I cannot believe. Go to Slim Sherri's, the real Slim Sherri's. She's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, 6 million followers. You have some dates coming up. You're going to be in St. Louis on June 1st.
Yes. So June 1st, we're playing at the Factory in St. Louis. It will be our biggest show to date.
Wow.
And the venue, I think, holds like 2,300 people, and we are 3/4 of the way sold out right now. So it'll be a packed house. It's going to be an amazing show. So yeah, we played 5 cities so far. St. Louis is next. I'm in, after St. Louis, I think we're working on some
Cincinnati
dates.
is the
Cincinnati. Yeah, so I lived there for 4.5 years. I'm looking forward to going back. I've got a lot.
I might have to go to that one because my son lives in Cincinnati, and I actually have that weekend, I think, available. So I might come see you. Then you're gonna be in Charleston on October 6th, 26th.
Yeah, we're playing at the Pack in Charleston, and then we're working on some other dates. So right now, there's some things that are in flux. But we're looking at we'll be in Seattle. It's sometime in September supposed to be Seattle. We have the cruise in November,
which is sold out.
It's completely sold out. Yeah. It's, there'll be like 1,500 people on that ship with us for 7 days. It's going to be wild. But I'm so excited. I did a cruise a year and a half ago, just me, with not this big cruise. And it was much smaller, but it was amazing. It was one of the most incredible times I've ever had. I met some amazing people. I made some great friends. And I was like, I got to do this again. So now we're doing that like big scale, but it's going to be great. And then Before the cruise, we're trying to work in maybe a Miami show because we'll be there going out of that area for the cruise. So we're talking about maybe trying to squeeze a Miami show in there. And then there might be some other shows that pop up. We're working on some things, venues. We didn't know what we were doing when we started touring. We had no idea what we were doing. So we've just been throwing things out there and making it work. And now we're finally starting to get to where we're like, okay, you can't just decide. Like Nashville, we didn't know it was going to turn into a tour. We went to Nashville just to hang out together. We did a little comedy show. I'd never done comedy before. Neither had John, neither had Kelly. And the show was so great that we were like, oh, we should do this again. And so, because we were sold out and there were so many people that couldn't come. So we did Cleveland. Cleveland was incredible. Cleveland might still to date be my favorite show.
Oh, I'm mad because that's where I'm from. I would have loved to.
Yeah, we played at the dueling piano bar, and
favorite
it was
place,
just incredible. And so from there we were like, okay, that was sold out, and it was amazing. We were like, maybe we should make this we should do this more often. So then it turned into a tour where we were like, we're doing the old person tour. We're only going to do one show every month or two, and now it's starting to ramp up. Where we're like, okay, we have all these people reaching out going, come to my city. We've got this going on, that going on. So we're starting to get our life together, because in January, what we figured out when we decided to make it a tour is you can't just call people and be like, hey, can I book your venue?
Yeah.
They book out, especially comedy clubs, they book out months and months, sometimes a year in advance. And we were struggling to find venues. So we were like, so some of the cities we originally had on our list, because we were going to go to Austin, New York, like Boston, we're having to make some adjustments because we're like, we can't play places that are big. I could play a comedy club that holds 100 people all day, but that's not enough. We need like something bigger. And so finding venues like that short notice is just impossible. And so we got lucky. We played Vegas a couple weeks ago. We were there for Cheer Choice Awards. And we just were like, well, we're already going to be there, so maybe we can work something out. And so we played at the Palms there. We played New Orleans in February, Atlanta in January. So 5 cities so far. St. Louis will be our 6th city. And Kelly was like, go big or go home. Like, we're going to get the factory. And so we did. It's this huge, we were nervous because like, there's no way we're going to put 2,300 people in a building. There's just no way. And now we're 3/4 of the way sold out. So that was the cruise too. We didn't think that we're like, we started out with like 200 rooms because we're like 200, that's 400 people. That's manageable. Or maybe 200, 250, 500 people's manageable. And then it sold out in a week. And we were like, we need more rooms. So
we're going to need a bigger boat. I think you guys said.
That was our thing. We're going to need a bigger boat. And it literally turned into what we didn't. The ship holds like 6,000 people or something like that. But they won't give us all those rooms, like unless you want to charter the whole ship, which we were like, we're not chartering about. Now we're looking at next year going, we might have to charter a whole ship because the cruise is probably going to become an annual thing. And I think it'll just get bigger and bigger over time. And now we're talking about trying to plan something like a land event, not a comedy show, but like something on land for all the people that are like, I don't do the water.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to do something because like on the ship we're playing dodgeball and we're doing some fun Gen X stuff. And so we're like, we need to bring that to like land, so we're talking about that now. I don't know what that's going to turn into, but I would love to be able to have like I call it like a Gen X Woodstock, but not the Woodstock that happened back in, the second Woodstock.
1990 or whatever that was.
Not bad. No. But, sort of this, maybe music and some food trucks and some
festival type
competitions thing. And just like a weekend thing where everybody gets together. So we're talking about doing something like that. So I don't know where that's going to go, but there's lots of ideas. And so this Gen X, here's what the moral of that story is. Although we're forgotten, we're invisible, we show up for each other, and we are still very relevant. And so you never know, a Gen X event might be coming to a city near you. We don't know what we're doing.
Well, I so appreciate you coming on the podcast and being one of the first.
Thank you.
Kelly Mano actually said that she's like, get with me in September. She's coming on too, but she's like, this summer's nuts, and I get that. Trust me.
Yeah, Kelly. Well, with St. Louis, that's her hometown. So she's not going to take anything on right now that's not promoting like St. Louis. So she's been doing a lot of radio shows and stuff like that. And then her kids, she's got kids still that play, sports and stuff. So she stays pretty busy. And when she's not and social events wear her out as well, right? Drains her social battery pretty fast. So she needs a lot of recovery in between. So if she said she'll do it, she'll do it.
Oh yeah. I have no doubt. Well, thank you so much. If you are not following the real Slim Sherri, check her out everywhere. She's on social media everywhere, bringing all the nostalgia of Gen X, and she's on tour. So look for her, go to her places, and she has all of this on her link tree. So you can subscribe to find out.
Actually, just go to therealslimsherri.com and everything's there.
Oh, good. Okay. So you got the website too.
That is where my link tree lives. If you're looking for tickets to a show, you can go to genxtakeover.com. But otherwise, everything sits, my companies, my socials.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to even mention that. The Wholesome Hippie skincare company. And you also have a boutique that has really cute stuff. Boutique. And the merch, I was going through your merch, and there was a coffee cup that says, "If you're happy and you know it, it's your meds." So check out her merch, because it is screaming Gen X, like sultry, sassy, just
snarky. Ripping in sarcasm. That's my Snark Junkie. I actually created Snark Junkie for all my fans.
Yep.
Because I had people that were like, "Oh, that should be on a T-shirt," or "That can I get that on a coffee mug?" So I designed it.
So you're like, sure.
So Snark Junkie. So yeah, those are my three main businesses, and then now the Gen X Takeover has become my fourth business. So I'm busy.
You're busy. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I have loved sitting and chatting with you. I've always enjoyed following you. You were one of the earlier people that I followed on social media. And I love your content, and I appreciate you inviting me on. I'm happy to have been a part of your early part of your podcast journey.
I so appreciate you. All right, everybody. I will see you here next week with another amazing creator from TikTok. So see you next week, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the TikTok Famous Podcast with Meredith Willits. If you're loving the unfiltered stories and behind-the-scenes truths, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show. Until next time,